Welcome back to the last episode in this supplement series, and we're talking today about supplementation. Now, if you've not listened to the past episodes, I highly recommend going back and listening to those because once again, there is a hierarchy and it makes a little bit more sense if you listen to these sequentially. Although you'll still get a lot out of the episode, it's good to start with the most important factor and then to the least. And obviously the least being this last one, which is supplementation. You can kind of think about it as the icing on the cake. And then if you really want to take it that one step further, you could always say that, the level or the hierarchy in nutrition is infinite because you can always make improvements. But at the same time, polishing things to perfection is a low-level activity, and if you start with the basics and the things that offer the greatest return on investment, the rest will generally take care of itself. So, to recap, in the first episode in this series, we talked about adherence, so behavior and lifestyle, and then we talked about energy balance and how to calculate your calories, and we gave you some actionable takeaways. Then we went into macronutrients. How do we fill those calories? Protein, fat, carbs, etc. Alcohol as well. And then we moved on to micronutrients, fruits, vegetables, vitamins, minerals, electrolytes, thinking about the cement to the bricks. If bricks were macronutrients and the micronutrients were the cement, they're the things that help them go together for overall health. And then we talked about nutrient timing, getting specific with when and how to consume these foods and the nutrients to better benefit your lifestyle, your body composition, and performance. And then lastly, today we're going to talk about supplements. So again, we can see the hierarchical order here. For example, if you're someone who's just focusing on supplements, but you don't have any idea about how many calories you're consuming and what is within those calories, i.e. how much protein, fat, and carbs, then just focusing on supplements is not really going to cut it, right? It's kind of like putting the cart before the horse. You need to put the horse in front of the cart, and that way it can pull it and push it. And that's an analogy that I've stolen directly from Mr. Eric Helms. Thank you, sir. Anyway, we are going to go into supplementation. So look, this is a very broad topic, like all of them, and what I want to do is niche down on the takeaways that are going to help you. And I believe if you're listening to this, you are someone who wants to lose body fat, gain muscle and strength, and look and feel better and have overall health and well-being. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the supplements that are going to do the best job for us within that. But I will talk generally about a few others, and I will mention others, and I'm going to give you some valuable resources to go to if you want to dig a little bit deeper and keep an eye on this. We're also going to use some screen grabs that we'll put on the screen as I'm talking through. So the first thing that I want to mention is, once again, supplements. If we look at the definition of a supplement, it is to add and enhance the whole. So a supplement is something that we can add on, again, supplement, that enhances the main bit of it, right? So in relation to food, they're there to bridge any gaps that are not met by food or to possibly enhance them even more. And if we think about that, it makes sense why we should prioritize food as the whole. So a couple of things that you can look at if you want to be up to date and you want to really understand what supplements are going to be worth investing your time and money in are the ISSN. So we've got the International Society of Sports Nutrition, and we've got another resource which I'm going to recommend, and I think I may have talked about this on a prior episode, which is examine.com. So the ISSN are always issuing position statements, and they usually do this annually, and they may do this even more frequently as well. And they will go through a list of the supplements that are the most effective, that we have the most evidence on, versus supplements that may work, and we do have evidence on, but we need more. And then we also have supplements that we need more and we're not really sure. And then we have supplements that are not effective at this point in time, and we probably shouldn't invest our time in. So there's almost 4 categories. There was anyway the last time I checked. I'm going to bring some up here in a moment for you. But that is a website and resource that you can keep an eye on, and that will kind of categorize what's worth and what perhaps isn't worth, again, putting time and money into. And examine.com is a collation of studies and meta-analyses that you can search any single supplement or ergogenic aid or substance, and you can pop it in there, and it will show you all of the current studies in the literature, and it will give you applications and takeaways of what that substance is, what it does, where it's derived from, the history of it, the studies that have been done, etc. So before you are quick to adopt something that is new, and this is where marketing comes in, usually you think this company says, hey, there's this new supplement, it's shiny, it's this, it's that, you might want to do some research on it, because first of all, this supplement we could find out in a couple of years' time actually might be a detriment rather than an advantage. But also, it could be something renamed, relabeled, and kind of repackaged as something that already pre-exists with a nice price tag on it. So this is where a lot of people get confused. So again, there's nothing wrong with supplements, but it's understanding what they do and having some knowledge and doing a little bit of research, so you're making sure that what you're putting in your body is actually what you're putting in your body and it's worth putting it in to your advantage. So with that said, we're looking for physique enhancement, right? So we're looking for performance enhancing supplements. Now, not to be confused with performance enhancing drugs, okay? So different substances, and those ones we're not going to talk about, well, not on this podcast and not today, but we may do that with someone qualified in a later series. However, what we want to focus on are those supplements that are going to enhance our physique and our health. So the ones that I wanted to really hone in on today are protein powders and blends, creatine monohydrate, beta-alanine, caffeine, and amino acids. And I'm going to mention and go through a couple of lists from the ISSN, just so you can kind of get an idea of what is got a lot of study behind it and what is worth investing in, all the way down to the things that are probably not. And some of them might be, a surprise to you as well. So protein. We know protein works because it's derived from food, it's derived from dairy, from whole food. And then perhaps, we add in different ingredients, should I say, to change the blend or to enhance the blend. So we know that protein definitely works, and we've got things like WPI, WPC, we've got casein proteins, and these are all just different derivatives and different types that digest and have different enzymes in them, or they might be more bespoke to one is fast digesting, one is slower digesting, one has got different types of proteins in it, and the like. So we know that helps us reach our protein goals, so that's a good tick of approval. So if there's, within our day, we're trying to aim for 200 grams of protein, saying it's just a random number I'm throwing out there. You might seem a lot, but again, that's going to be a larger individual with more muscle. And we're only able to get 150, and we're really struggling to eat it via food, right? We're struggling to get it from, dairy or plant-based foods or animal-based foods, and we're just really full. Then we might use a protein shake. We might use a protein supplement to have a shake. It's easy because we are, just drinking it. We're skipping out that whole eating and digesting and chewing process, so it doesn't take or occupy a large space, and we can just drink it and get it straight into the system. So it's a lot faster, it's a lot more efficient. And that helps people actually get to their protein goals. And in the early days, when most of us are not reaching our protein targets, this is where the shakes can come in handy. The problem is when people think that the shakes are magic, or they just rely on them too heavily and they neglect food. Now, in a short term, that might be a good way to get your fat loss going. It might be a good way to get your protein target, something a little bit more healthy if you're really under consuming. But again, it should be something that's added on top of whole foods and whole protein sources, or complete protein sources, I should say. So creatine monohydrate, there's a lot. We could talk about this endlessly. It is, at this point, to my knowledge, the most researched supplement on the planet. It's one of the safest as well, obviously, for that reason. Now, creatine monohydrate is creatine in its purest form, and you may have heard of other derivatives of creatine that you can get as well, which again have other added ingredients which might have a different benefit. But creatine monohydrate is generally the gold standard, and that's all you need. So when we're looking at creatine, what it does is it increases, or it replenishes, our natural creatine stores which are found in the body. So when we train and when we exercise, those stores actually deplete. And if we're consistently weight training, we're not able to top those up naturally via food. And if we were, we'd have to eat an obscene amount of meat or vegetables or other foods that we couldn't possibly get enough of to get that creatine in. One, because it wouldn't be manageable for a digestive standpoint, but also it wouldn't be very good on the old wallet. You'd just be trying to eat too much food, and also you'd blow your calories out too. So this is where that supplement comes in handy. However, we have now found out that creatine does not only just enhance performance, but it actually improves health and other health markers too, such as cognitive abilities, the ability to focus, anti-aging and collagen reproduction, and the like. And the list goes on. And if you want to understand more of this, I've done a podcast with the number one, at this stage, creatine researcher, Dr. Darren Kandel. And I did that one a while back, and I'll put a link in the show notes to this episode too. Well worth listening to, and it really kind of summarizes why we should all be supplementing with creatine. When we supplement with it, we don't necessarily need to load on creatine or take an obscene amount every day. Depending on our body weight and depending on how heavy we are, anywhere from 5 grams to 10 grams a day seems to be the sweet spot. And this is something that you consistently can have every day rather than having loading periods, although you can do that as well. So that is what I'd recommend for creatine. And look, I could go through all recommended dosages and whatnot, and I might do that for a few of these supplements, which I'm talking about now, but I'm not going to do it for every single one I mentioned because the podcast will be too long, and this is where I want you to go do your own research. However, if you look at the handful that I'm recommending, these are the ones that are going to give you the biggest return on investment, and most likely the only ones that you're going to need unless you're specifically deficient in something or you have a specific performance outcome, which is dissimilar to what we're talking about here on the podcast. Then we move on to beta-alanine, which is kind of a nice little carry on to what I said, because ultimately, beta-alanine really is good for people who are training for long periods of time or getting to high metabolic thresholds, causing a lot of lactate in the body. So people who are working really intensely for long periods of time, think about endurance-based athletes, fighters, even CrossFit athletes as well, which would probably be the most similar in the weight training world because they're concurrently training. They're starting, they're stopping, and even then they're going through different bouts of intensity, and they might not rest for too long. Where, your general bodybuilder and people who are going to the gym like ourselves, we might go in the gym for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours max, but we're not training for that whole time. We've got a lot of rest in between, and then we're going in and we're performing a set of X amount of reps, and we're generally going to be in that set for maybe a minute if we're lucky at maximum, possibly even 30 seconds, depending on the lift that we're doing. It might even be less if you're a power lifter going for doubles and triples. So personally, beta-alanine, based on what it does and buffering that fatigue, is probably not going to be the best, although it is in a lot of pre-workouts as well, and we'll get to that in a moment. So beta-alanine, I'd say if you're an endurance-based athlete, and then the dosage, again, is going to depend on your weight and, again, the amount of work that you're doing, shall we say. And again, this is where you can find this on the ISSN, etc. Or if you go down to a good supplement store too, and you have someone that's trustworthy and knowledgeable, they'll be able to direct you with this. Caffeine is an absolute belter. We're all familiar with this one. It's probably the most popular drug on the planet, right? And we do know it 100% works. It's a phenomenal supplement. And what can we use it for? A lot of people think we use it to increase energy. It's not actually the case. It actually reduces fatigue. So if you think about, if you've got, say, on a computer, 20 windows open, and you take some caffeine, this is metaphorically speaking, it will close a number of those windows. So it will allow us to focus a little bit more and reduce that fatigue that we feel, therefore giving us the feel or the placebo that we have gained more energy and focus. We see people doing this who perhaps are tired or they're traveling, and again, for sporting performance too. Caffeine also has been shown to reduce the perception of fatigue. So when we're training and we're under intense loads or we're going through a rigorous training period, we can find that, again, studies have been done, recorded, where people report that they have lower fatigue when they've taken caffeine. And this can also be the same with intra-workout carbs too, like carbohydrate mouth rinsing or having something like a sports drink supplement too. So caffeine is phenomenal for that. And look, it does also satiate hunger and many other variables. But again, I want to hone in on the main points here today. So caffeine is great, but once again, if we abuse it, it starts to have negative effects. It can disrupt the gut, toilet time, it can cause anxiety, jitters, stress, so it's not to be messed with. And look, depending on the size of the body and your tolerance to caffeine, which you can get more desensitized to over time, is going to depend on the amount. Now, personally, I recommend no more than 300 milligrams a day, and I still think that's quite a lot. So if you look at your standard cup of coffee, it might be 60 to 80 milligrams per shot, depending on the caffeine. And I will tell you this is quite interesting. So there was a study done on the Gold Coast, and they went around to a number of cafes. I don't know how many it was specifically, but it was a very large number, and they measured the amount of caffeine in a standard shot of coffee, right? So they got a shot at all of this different baristas, and the amount of caffeine ranged from as low as 40 grams all the way up to like 100 to 120 milligrams, or something of that sort. The discrepancy, because this is the takeaway, was huge, meaning that when you go and get a cup of coffee, sometimes you have a coffee, right, and you're like, didn't really know if that did anything. Sometimes you don't feel anything, and then sometimes you have a cup of coffee and, half an hour later, you're like buzzing, like, what's all that about? Well, that's because there's a discrepancy. Why? Depending on the beans, the way the barista makes it, the temperature, and any of you coffee connoisseurs out there will understand, there's a lot of discrepancy in variables in a coffee. So that's where sometimes it can be better to get your caffeine from a source that is standardized, whether that's a sugar-free energy drink or whether that's tea or another ergogenic aid supplement which you've got caffeine into as well. However, if you only had 1 cup of coffee a day, you'd probably be fine. And again, looking at a lot of these new energy drinks that are coming out now with 200 and 300 milligrams of caffeine, that's all well and good, but that can be quite dangerous if you have a couple of those a day or you have that in coalition with another pre-workout or a coffee. You may find over time that your gym performance and your level of focus is starting to go downhill, and this is because of the abuse of caffeine. So once again, it's not to be messed with, and most of you listening to this are possibly taking too much caffeine, so I definitely reduce and keep an eye on that intake. Again, sleep, number 1 for recovery and performance, and overall health and focus will be second to none, and then obviously hydration and getting enough food. So this is where, again, we talk about that hierarchy. Now, one of the other ones I was going to mention was aminos. Now, branched chain amino acids, BCAAs, you've got EAAs as well, essential amino acids, free-form amino acids. If we are having enough protein, then really we don't necessarily need to supplement with more of this. Now, we know that this can promote satiety. We know it can help you get more water in as well. And also, if we're in a severe deficit, it could even stop us from breaking down muscle tissue because it adds more amino acids in the bloodstream, which means we're less likely to go into a catabolic state, breakdown of muscle. But again, it's not massively high up on the list, and it wouldn't be high up on my list either. It is more of a if you want to, as a bit of insurance, but also if it stops cravings from sugary sweet drinks that contain a lot of calories and it helps you consume more water, that's when I would say, brilliant, I'm all for it, because then it is worth the investment. And again, guys, some of this is just my opinion too. So I'm trying to give you some factual evidence and I'm giving you my spin based on experience. So keep that in mind. Now, before we wrap up, because again, this can get very lengthy and very in-depth, I wanted to go through some position statements from the ISSN, which again are constantly changing and being updated because we're always doing new research. And I want to go through some general health supplements versus some performance-enhancing supplements, some weight loss supplements, and some muscle-building supplements, which some of them I've already talked to you about. So, for example, general health supplements, and again, this is all on top of food, okay, and all of the other factors we mentioned. So glucosamine, and we've got chondrodroitin. So some of these are just ridiculous. So for cartilage degeneration and joint pain, there's possible benefits. Vitamin C, glutamine, echinacea, and zinc. Immune function enhancement recommended for certain oxidation deficiencies. Creatine, we've talked about that. HMB, BCAAs, L-carnitine, tartrate, aid athlete training and food tolerance, and then omega-3 fatty acids containing EHP and DHA. So they're things like your fish oil supplements. And that's something that is, if you're not having oily fish 2 to 3 times a week, I'd probably recommend a good fish oil or a krill oil supplement just to make sure you're getting in those omega-3 fatty acids, or at least the essential fatty acids as well. They're good for heart health, hormonal function, joint health, and the like. So again, these are just the position statements that I'm just reading through here. So you'll notice a lot of these supplements will cross over, where they're not just for general health, but they're also for performance or weight loss or things that we've found to be specific to a certain goal. And you've got to keep in mind, these things that I'm reading out, for example, say vitamin C, you're going to find that in food, right? If you're getting vitamin C and you're eating your fruits and vegetables and whatnot, you're going to be getting these things anyway. And this is where you might say, well, what about a multivitamin? Well, I'll say if you're getting 3 to 5 servings of fruit and veg and you're eating mostly whole foods, you could go for it. But again, you might be getting that, or you probably will be from your nutritional intake, but it might be a bit of extra insurance. And that's where you've got to make sure you get a good brand that actually has what it says it has on the label, and also what are you digesting from that actual tablet. So again, a lot of it could be placebo as well. And again, it's about taking out that extra insurance if you want to. But if you get it through food, you'll be fine. Now, performance enhancing supplements. So we've got here 4 categories. We'll put these on the screen. We've got apparently effective, possibly effective, too early to tell, and apparently ineffective. So apparently effective, we have sports drinks, which again are phenomenal. Things like your Powerades and Gatorades, which are good for intra-workout carbohydrate and also post-workout as well, to replenish electrolytes that are lost through sweat. Also, I usually have this before and during my workout to filter in a little bit of extra carbohydrates, but also again, it lowers that perception of fatigue, and it just allows to drip feed some carbohydrates, stabilize blood glucose sugar levels and the like while I'm training. So we've got creatine in here, we've got sodium, CHO, What am I looking at here? Is that chlorine? I can't remember whether it was. It's not chlorine. It is. Jamie, get this up on the screen for me. Thanks, mate. It's not that. I'm trying to think of. We used to use this in the swimming baths, and it's not something that you think you can consume, but it can actually help. Anyway, sodium phosphate, or the phosphates appear to have no benefit. Sodium bicarbonate, that's one of them. Baking soda, which can buffer lactate as well. Caffeine and beta-alanine. Now, post-exercise, CHO, of course, carbohydrates, absolutely. Well, we'll edit that out. We'll edit that out. CHO, carbohydrates, which basically are from sports drinks, etc. So intra-workout, or we can even use lollies, things like that. Possibly effective. Post-exercise carbohydrate and protein. Again, we get this through food. EAAs, essential amino acids, free form. Branched-chain amino acids, HMB and glycerol. Too early to tell. MCT oils, apparently ineffective. Glutamine and ribose. So some of these as well, you might not be familiar with, and this is where going to places like examine.com or ISSN is going to be important for you if you want to read up on it and have the knowledge, so you don't get the wool pulled over your eyes. Now, weight loss supplements, apparently effective. Low calorie diet, well, I mean, again, there we go, we've talked about it. It's food. Supplements, though, we've got ECAs, ephedra, caffeine, and aspirin. Again, I wouldn't recommend most of those apart from caffeine. Possibly effective high fiber diets, green tea extract, CLA. Too early to tell. What have we got? Gamer, Sylvester, lecithin, betaine, forskolin. That sounds like something else. DHA and 7-keto DHA. So again, this is where you'll see a lot of supplements that you might look on the shelf and you might not be familiar with. If you actually look them up, you can be like, oh, actually, this has not got much research or studies, because the big names confuse people, but when they're attached to small cherry-picked studies that have shown some level of fat loss, you might go, oh, it's shown fat loss. Yeah, but that might be like 0.2 or 0.5%, and it might be in a specific population on a certain person in a certain age group doing a certain thing. So you have to also think about the context. And then apparently ineffective calcium peruvurate, chlorium, garcina, cambidia, HCA, L-carnitine, phosphate sodium, and it continues on. So there's more. Now, muscle building supplements, which is probably what obviously we're focusing on here, is weight and mass gain powders. So we talked about combinations of protein powders, which will have carbohydrates and fats that are implemented in them. Creatine monohydrate, protein and EAA, so protein essential amino acids. Possibly effective HMB, current lack of necessary data, branched chain amino acids, and then we've got the too early to tell and apparently ineffective, and again there's a long list in there that you can look at too. But ultimately, if you are really interested, as I've already aforementioned, I'd be going to the ISSN and or examine as well to have a look at that. But if you're unsure, food first, as we've talked about, and once we figured out the macronutrients, the micronutrients, and then you can play with your meal timing, I would recommend, or what I recommend to my clients, is protein powder to make sure that they've got it on hand when maybe they're running short on time or they can't get it through food. Creatine monohydrate as well once they've got the basic food in order, because we know it's good for performance and overall health benefits. Fish oil if they're not getting oily fish a couple of times a week. So fish oil tablets, again, it's convenient, it's efficient, and it works. And again, it might be sports drinks before, after, during a workout, especially if someone can't get enough carbohydrates in, or they've not got enough hydration, or again, they are starting to train at a level of intensity that is conducive to that. And caffeine, I will talk about them not abusing it, etc. And then the others like amino acids they may want, but that's pretty much it. I keep it very simple because the things that have the greatest return on investment go a long way. And a lot of the time, it's not about getting a million supplements. Usually when you're doing that, you're wasting more money than you are actually investing in time on things that you could be getting a higher return on investment for, which is understanding calories, understanding what goes in your mouth, meal timing, getting to bed earlier, etc. And all these things that we've talked about. So, guys, that concludes our nutrition hierarchy series. So again, we've broken it down from the most important factor to the least. What we're going to do after this is we're going to move on to the training hierarchy. So similar to this, but now talking about training, starting with the most important factors to the least, and how to manipulate your training, what to invest your time in, what to focus on first, everything from volume, frequency, intensity. What is that? How does it work? And how do you manage it? Exercise selection, tempo, and the like. And it continues on. But we'll get into that on the next series. So if you like this series, guys, Make sure you share it around. Let me know if you want to see something specific. If you've got any questions, comment below. I'll always get back to you. And again, all of what we've talked about today, anything that's important will be in the show notes so you can reference it and implement it. All right, team. Until next time, stay fearless. For those of you who are confused, frustrated, and sick and tired of not seeing the results that you want or deserve, make sure that you click the Apply for Coaching button in the description below and line up a completely free consultation with myself where we can discover if it's a good fit as client and coach and take your health and physique to the next level once and for all.